When you hear the name Cleopatra, what comes to mind? A dazzling Egyptian queen draped in gold, who enthralled Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. That image is largely a product of later storytelling and Roman propaganda. When we peel back the layers of myth, the real Cleopatra emerges as a politically sophisticated Hellenistic ruler, often misrepresented by later sources. Cleopatra VII belonged to the Ptolemaic dynasty, a Macedonian Greek ruling family founded in Egypt after Alexander the Great's empire fragmented. The dynasty c. 305–30 BC ruled Egypt for nearly 3 centuries and adopted many Egyptian religious and administrative practices while remaining culturally Hellenistic. Cleopatra is generally described as Macedonian Greek by ancestry, but the precise identity of her mother is not securely known. Therefore, one cannot exclude the possibility of some local ancestry. More importantly, Cleopatra presented herself as pharaoh and engaged directly with Egyptian religion and institutions. Unlike most of her Ptolemaic predecessors, Cleopatra is the first in her dynasty for whom we have clear evidence of fluency in the Egyptian language. Scholars emphasize that this ability was a significant political tool. Speaking Egyptian allowed her to address and be recognized by native religious and administrative elites in ways earlier Ptolemies usually did not. That said, some earlier members of the dynasty may have had limited ceremonial knowledge of Egyptian. What distinguishes Cleopatra is the stronger evidence for genuine fluency. Cleopatra came to the throne in 51 BC, when she was about 18 years old, and was installed as co-regent with her younger brother Ptolemy XIII, who was roughly 1013 by most estimates. Such sibling co-regencies were conventional for the dynasty, but often unstable in practice. Court factions and regents quickly turned against Cleopatra. She was temporarily forced from Alexandria and into a period of political exile. But Cleopatra was not one to accept defeat. She was a survivor, intelligent and resourceful. She knew she couldn't reclaim her throne alone. She needed a powerful ally. And she saw her opportunity with the arrival of the most powerful man in the world at that time, Julius Caesar. According to the historian Plutarch, she had herself rolled up inside a carpet, or some accounts say a linen sack, and smuggled past her brother's guards directly into Caesar's private quarters. Caesar, who was 52 at the time, was instantly impressed not just by her charm, but by her sharp intellect and political savvy. He saw in her a capable leader he could support. Caesar sided with Cleopatra, and after a brief but intense civil war in Alexandria, her brother Ptolemy XIII was defeated and drowned in the Nile. Caesar's support allowed Cleopatra to be restored. She later reigned with younger co-rulers, including Ptolemy XIV, though real power lay with her. Their alliance was both political and personal. She gave birth to his son, Ptolemy Caesar, nicknamed Caesarion, or Little Caesar. This child was a massive political asset. He was the potential heir to both the legacy of the pharaohs and the power of Rome, a living symbol of a new world order. Cleopatra even traveled to Rome with Caesarion, living in one of Caesar's villas. Her presence caused quite a stir in Roman society, which viewed her as an exotic and dangerously ambitious foreign queen. However, Cleopatra's plans were thrown into chaos with Caesar's assassination in 44 BC. Rome was plunged into another civil war, and she had to navigate a treacherous new political landscape. The Roman world was eventually split between Caesar's heir Octavian in the west and his top general Mark Antony in the east. Antony summoned Cleopatra to Tarsus 41 BC to test her loyalty. According to Plutarch and other sources, she arrived with elaborate pageantry. Whether the spectacle looked exactly as later Roman writers described it is uncertain, but the intent is clear. Cleopatra presented herself as an equal and as an embodiment of Hellenistic royal ritual. Antony summoned Cleopatra to Tarsus in modern-day Turkey to question her loyalty, but Cleopatra knew this was another audition, and she planned to steal the show. She arrived not as a subordinate queen, but as the goddess Venus, or Aphrodite in Greek. sailing up the river on a magnificent golden barge with purple sails and silver oars. She was surrounded by attendants dressed as nymphs and cupids, while exotic perfumes wafted from the ship to the shore. The entire city turned out to see the spectacle. Antony, who fancied himself the embodiment of the god Dionysus, was completely captivated. She presented herself as a divine being, his equal. Their alliance quickly blossomed into a legendary love affair. They spent a winter together in Alexandria, and over the next decade, they had 3 children together: the twins Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene, and another son, Ptolemy Philadelphus. Their partnership was a powerful fusion of Egyptian wealth and Roman military might. Together, they dreamed of a grand Eastern empire, with Alexandria as its capital, rivaling Rome itself. In a grand public ceremony known as the Donations of Alexandria, Antony declared Cleopatra Queen of Kings, and named their children as rulers over vast territories. This was a direct challenge to Octavian and the authority of Rome. Back in Rome, Octavian launched a brilliant propaganda campaign against them. He portrayed Antony as a man who had abandoned his Roman virtues, bewitched by a manipulative foreign sorceress. He painted Cleopatra as a decadent and power-hungry queen who wanted to conquer Rome. The Roman people, wary of a powerful female ruler and foreign influence, bought into this narrative. The final confrontation came at the naval battle of Actium in 31 BC. The naval engagement at Actium was a decisive defeat for Antony and Cleopatra. Their fleet was outmaneuvered by Octavian's forces. They retreated to Egypt. As Octavian advanced on Alexandria, events moved quickly to a dramatic close. Antony, after receiving false news that Cleopatra had died, attempted suicide and later died in Alexandria. Ancient reports place his death in or near Cleopatra's mausoleum palace, though the precise sequence varies across sources. A few days later, Octavian captured the city and met with Cleopatra. He intended to parade her through the streets of Rome in chains, as the ultimate symbol of his victory. But Cleopatra would never allow herself to be humiliated in such a way. In her final act of defiance, she chose her own fate. The traditional narrative records that Cleopatra died by an ASP, Egyptian cobra, bite, a story attested in several ancient authors. According to the most famous account, she had an asp, a venomous snake and a symbol of Egyptian royalty and divine power, smuggled to her in a basket of figs. She died from its bite, a pharaoh to the very end. With her death, the Ptolemaic dynasty ended, and Egypt became a province of the Roman Empire. Octavian, soon to be known as Emperor Augustus, had his rival eliminated and Egypt's vast wealth at his disposal. To secure his power, he had Cleopatra's son, Caesarion, executed, extinguishing the last direct link to Julius Caesar. For centuries, Cleopatra's story wasn't told by her people. It was rewritten by her enemies. The Romans turned her into a villain, a dangerous seductress, a warning to men about what happens when a woman dares to wield power. But the truth? The real Cleopatra was far more formidable. She was brilliant, multilingual, and astonishingly educated, a strategist who read philosophy and studied science, yet ruled an empire. She commanded fleets, negotiated with generals, and played the political game better than most men of her time. Cleopatra was not some side character in the drama of Caesar and Antony. She was the author of her own legend, the last Pharaoh of Egypt, a queen who fought to keep her kingdom independent in a world collapsing under Rome's shadow. Her story isn't one of romance. It's one of resilience, intelligence, and power, of a woman who refused to be defined by anyone but herself. So when you hear her name, don't just think of beauty and betrayal. Think of the scholar, the strategist, the sovereign who once held the fate of empires in her hands. And now I want to hear from you. What do you think is the most misunderstood thing about Cleopatra? Let's talk in the comments. See you in the next deep dive into history.